Good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. I'm Kerry Walker. I'm the president and CEO of the Guidance Center, and I'm pleased to welcome you. This is the third annual Images of Resilience photography exhibit, and for the last 2 years, we've had a storytelling event associated with it. It's been interesting and kind of wonderful to see how this event has been evolving over the last few years. We, this year, have 24 photographers who contributed 64 photographs. As you saw out in the outer area there, they are also all for sale. So if you didn't make a impulse purchase earlier, you can do one after the event. I want to thank Stephanie Prechter and Joe Gruber, our co-chairs for the event. They're here tonight. You can wave, I know. I appreciate their leadership and creativity, and really they're responsible for evolving this event. Stephanie had the brainchild for this event in the first place, but the storytelling has kind of evolved after Joe got involved, and it's just been really wonderful to see how this is developing, so we appreciate that. For me personally, this event is really special because resiliency is really core to the mission of the Guidance Center. And I've mentioned to a lot of people, you know, we do a lot of events at the Guidance Center over the years, but not many of our events, the content of them is not always that related to the mission that we do. And this event from start to finish is really connected to what we do as an agency. Guidance Center's been around since 1958. We're celebrating our 60th year. Thank you. This past year, our board of directors, I think in wanting to really update our mission and vision statements of the agency. A lot of nonprofits have really lengthy mission statements that are hard to remember, and more recently we went through a process where we revised them, and they're kind of three simple statements. So we nurture development, foster resilience, and cultivate well-being. And that's what we do at the Guidance Center, from birth, pre-birth in many of our programs, to our Head Start programs, to our children's mental health, and our adult services, our programs for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and substance use disorder programs. It's all about people. And I think what is important to me about what we're doing tonight is that the stories that people tell are really important. So photography is great because for people it could be inspired by an image, a thought. A story contains the same thing, but it's a little more right down to the person. And so I'm excited for you to hear the storytellers tonight, and I will get out of your way, but I want to thank our sponsors. Patrick and Karen Smith-Bauer have sponsored the storytelling event the last couple of years. Thank you, they're here tonight. And we've had wonderful in-kind support from Steve Wildern and the Wayne County Community College District, making this space available and making the exhibition space available free of charge throughout the month. We really appreciate that. This is a list of all of our other sponsors, and you know, please support them. We appreciate their support. And now it's my privilege and honor to welcome our MC for tonight, Shannon. He is known for his work on NPR and Snap Judgment and many other things, and we're going to bring him up tonight to kind of keep the flow going and introduce our storytellers. So come on up, Shannon. Appreciate it. I think you're on.
All right. Resilience. And thank you to Carrie. One more time for Carrie. Resilience. I thought about that word today. I woke up this morning and I was thinking about that word, resilience. Just started the course of my day, went to go brush my teeth, and I'm thinking about resilience. The first thing that came to mind for me was bamboo for some reason. So I went to my computer to research bamboo, and I found out some things. Bamboo is not like a tree. It's really more like grass. And some people can mistaken it and think it's fragile because it sways with the gentlest of breeze. But there was a Japanese proverb along with it. Let me see if I remember it. It was like, the wind grow tired, but the bamboo will still stand tall. I probably butchered that in so many different ways, but you get the idea. So I'm researching all this stuff on bamboo, and I get a little hungry, so I go to the kitchen to fix myself something to eat. Now I've been trying to lose weight, so I don't make the bacon and the eggs and all the stuff I want to make. I make some plain, bland oatmeal. And I've been doing pretty good. About 6 weeks, I done lost about 12 pounds. So I'm making my oatmeal. Thank you so much. I'm making my oatmeal, and I'm thinking about resilience. What things are resilient? Tardigrades. I know that's random. Some of you probably don't even know what a tardigrade is, but I've been watching a lot of nature shows on Netflix. So I'm thinking tardigrades. And I'm stirring my oatmeal, but I go back to the computer and I'm checking on tardigrades, and I find out some things about tardigrades. Tardigrades, if you don't know, they're like these little tiny species that look like a tiny Jabba the Hutt with about 8 little arms that's coming out of it. And when everything goes down, when the oceans turn to fire and the skies are dark, tardigrades will survive. I find out about tardigrades. Humans can't survive 100 hours without water, but a tardigrade can live for 100 years without water. They've regenerated some tardigrades from that long. Tardigrades can withstand 1,000 times the radiation of humans, more than humans. Tardigrades, they have something else about tardigrades. They can survive on the ocean floor. They can even survive in the vacuum of space. So tardigrades is a bad thing right there. That thing can survive. So when I looked about tardigrades, they're kind of amazing. I kind of fall into this trap. I don't know if you work on the computers or you guys go on YouTube. I'm sure you do. You can fall into these traps. So I'm just watching all these videos about tardigrades until the house is filled with smoke and I forget all about my oatmeal. I'm not kidding. I done burnt up so many pots and pans and stuff just forgetting about stuff. So throughout my day, I have to go to WDT to work on some project that we're working on, and I'm thinking about resilience. And I'm listening to a show that they had on DET as I'm going to DET, because I like to be ironic like that, I'm just listening as I'm going to DET. And they had a show that was talking about movies, and I guess they have an exhibit at the DIA that they're doing with costumes from Star Wars. Star Wars I love Star Wars too. So I'm thinking of movies. What movies highlight resilience? And I like inspirational movies like Rudy and all those kind of movies. But one movie stood out to me when I thought about resilience. It's a movie called Man of Honor. And it was about this Navy diver named Carl Brashear. And the movie stood out so much to me that I had wrote a little snippet about this man in one of my stories called Swim. I'm gonna read it because I thought it highlights resilience. Carl Brashear, when asked why he wanted to be a U.S. Navy diver so bad, he said, because they said I couldn't have it. and I ain't gonna let nobody steal my dream. Met with blatant racism, enduring bitter isolation and face-to-face prejudice, hostility, Brashear held on to his dream. He had only achieved a 6th grade education. He graduated 16 out of 17 to become the first African-American U.S. Navy diver. But that wasn't his dream, that was only a milestone. Brashear was assigned to missions. He married and had children. He served honorably on a mission off the coast of Spain to retrieve a nuclear bomb that was lost by the Air Force in a plane crash. They recovered the bomb, mission accomplished. Aboard the ship, men moved like cranks, pistons, and gears. Then a hitch, a towing line malfunctioned, snapped, metal went awry, and caught Brashear's left leg in his path, severed his leg below the knee. 1 year rehabilitation to learn how to walk again with a prosthesis. Expected to retire with honor, Brashear asked to be sent to the Navy diving school to resume his ascent toward his dream. After 2 years, Carl Brashear became another first. The first amputee to be reinstated as a diver in the United States Navy, full duty, then master diver, then master chief boatswain mate. He retired master chief petty officer, the highest enlisted pay grade in the United States Navy. Even had a movie made about him with an Academy Award winner playing his part. Resilience, resilience. And it says pause for applause. One thing I realized about resilience is it's not seen until it's tried. Bamboo. How many here have weathered any storms in their life and still stand? A lot of us, a lot of us. The tardigrade. How many of us have had to endure harsh circumstances, harsh environments, but yet we still here and we survive? A lot of us, and we know a lot of people who have. Carl Brashear. How many of us have had to face the unexpected, powered through, even if sometimes that powering through doesn't look like powering through, but still succeed? Many of us, and many of us know a lot of people. Resilience. If that's you, if any of those stories make you think about some things that you've had to go through, I want you guys to give it up for yourselves. Today we're going to hear stories of resilience. So I'm telling you, prepare yourself. If this was church, I'd be like the ushers have tissues and Kleenex. Just raise your hand and they'll. So you're going to hear stories from real people about resilient times and resilient fortitude that they've had to go through. So I want you guys to keep that in mind when you hear these stories. And these are real stories from real people. There's no performers. I don't know if you've been to a storytelling show before, but these aren't performers. This isn't something that they may do all the time, or even if they do speak all the time, they're not necessarily telling this personal of a story. So I want you guys to keep that in mind. Real people, just like me and you, brave enough to get on stage and share their worlds and let us walk in their shoes for a little bit just to hear from their own mouths. So I want you guys to give the biggest support to all the storytellers that we're here today. I know you guys, I can feel the support from you guys because I feel very comfortable talking up here. This is my hometown. I'm a Downriver guy, grew up Ecorse, grew up Southwest Detroit, always hanging out in Taylor and Southgate and these areas. So I feel right at home, and I want everybody to feel right at home as they tell their stories. So let me hear how Downriver shows love to storytellers. Just let me hear one time. Let's test this thing out. That's awesome. I want y'all to double that, triple that for our first storyteller as she takes the stage. So I'm gonna say a little something here. Let me see. Our first storyteller actually works with the Guidance Center. And you guys all should have received programs when you came into the auditorium. And those programs have everybody's bio all written out perfectly, and it shows all the wonderful things that they've done. And I want you guys to take your time, look at all the bios within the program, follow the people on their social media, get to know them well, read their books and all those things. I'll let you guys do that yourself. When I thought to introduce people to the stage, I just kind of like to take them through the same journey that I went on this morning. Like thinking about resilience. What words come to mind when you think of resilience? So our first storyteller, she works with the Guidance Center. She's an author. But I asked her, what's the first thing that comes to mind when she thinks of resilience? And her answer, good answer too. She said Muhammad Ali. So I want you guys to get a warmest welcome. Start right now, the warmest welcome for Kathleen Crane.
Good evening. See if I can move this. Oh, went by itself. Resiliency to me is the ability to get back up again when life has knocked you down, sometimes hard. And in the late 1990s, I'd been knocked down very hard and I was not getting back up again. After years of managing a very successful vintage clothing store downriver, I started to experience my first major depression. It seemed to come out of nowhere. All of my get up and go, all of my confidence, everything was just wiped out like it had never been. In its place was panic and fear and nonstop worrying. I just wanted the pain to stop and eventually attempted suicide. This landed me in Wyandotte Henry Ford Hospital for the first time in the psychiatric ward. I left with a diagnosis of major depression. In the year that followed, I quit my job. I moved back in with my parents. I lost my apartment. And I went on disability. But gradually, the antidepressant that they had prescribed me that year ago in the hospital began to finally work. And the depression started to lift and lift and lift and lift. And finally, I was in my first full-blown manic episode. It felt great after all that depression. I didn't know what was going on. I was just happy to be feeling good again. But it eventually escalated into sleepless nights, paranoia, bizarre behavior. I landed in Wyandotte Hospital again, and this time left with a new diagnosis, bipolar disorder. In the 3 years that followed, this cycle, depression, mania, and the hospital, haunted me. Sometimes the mania was accompanied by psychotic episodes, which included hearing voices, thinking I had abilities that the doctors called grandiose, such as healing powers, being able to read people's minds. I sometimes got very preoccupied with religion, very preoccupied. They knew my name well in the psychiatric wards. You see, depression runs in my family. I had had 2 cousins who had committed suicide, and my father had severe depression in his mid-30s and was hospitalized as well. One day, as I was sitting at my parents' house on the sofa, as usual, chain smoking, watching TV, but not really seeing it, worrying, my father said to me, "You know, you could get up off that couch and go for a walk. You can't walk and be depressed at the same time." I went through all the reasons why I could not go for a walk. Number 1, there was a blizzard outside. The snow was piling up. Number 2, every time I left the house, I had panic attacks, severe ones. And number 3, I hadn't slept well the night before. I was tired and my back ached. He listened, and then he said, "Bundle up. I'm going with you." Walking in that blizzard with my father was the beginning of my recovery. It proved to me that I wasn't helpless after all, that there were small things I could do to help myself. It also showed me that I wasn't alone in this. There was somebody else who had walked the walk and made it to the other side. And lastly, I started to build some resiliency, that ability to get back up again when life has knocked you down. But in 2004, my father died of complications of lung cancer. I thought I'd taken it quite well. After all, I hadn't cried at the funeral. 3 months later, I was in Oakwood Heritage Hospital dealing with a depression worse than any I'd ever experienced before. I had a patient sitter at my bed at all times because I was considered a very high suicide risk. When my family and friends came to visit me, I often didn't recognize them. I'd sunk so low. I was there over a month when the doctors decided to transfer me to Wyandotte Hospital as they had run out of options. Many believed me to be a hopeless case. But they didn't know one thing about me, and that was that I'd been knocked down hard before, and I always got back up again. It has been 13 years now since I have seen the inside of a hospital Thank you. Thank you. 13 years since I've had an episode of depression or mania. I am now off of disability, and I work at the Guidance Center as a full-time peer support specialist. I now walk the walk with others in their recovery, which is always an ongoing journey. Thank you.
So I was walking throughout my day, or driving, I should say, to WDET for the project. And I get there, and the person I'm working with on this project is always late. I was like I had a close time frame because I had to come to the resilience event later in the evening, so I just wanted to get the DET thing over with. But this guy, he's like, he's my friend, but he's always late. He always forgets to come there. So I was waiting in the lobby area. But as I'm doing events, I just ask a lot of people about resilience because I'm thinking about it. So I asked the receptionist who was there, and she looked like she could care less totally. You know, when I asked, just in general, everybody, no DET people here, is it? Everybody there just looks like public radio, I guess. It's just not that exciting, you know what I'm saying? So I work with public radio, trust me, I know. So but I asked, I say, hey, when you think of resilience, what do you think of? Like, what's the first thought that comes to your mind? And she looked up from whatever she was doing and didn't think about it long. She said, women. And I thought about my wife, thought about my mom, my grandma, both my grandmas, thought about my sister. She'd get a kick out of that. And I just nodded. But she was already going back to doing what she was doing, not even paying attention to me, you know. She could care less. But women, that was a good answer. You guys ready for some more stories? Our next storyteller, you have the program, read through his bio. He's a graduate of Ohio State University. He's an athlete. He works in the medical field. But I asked him what the first thing come to mind when he thinks of resilience. And it took him a little longer to think about it. It took him a little longer. And he said he just sees this scratched up, bruised person. They're scraped up, but they're still crawling. They're still moving forward. That's what he said. So guys, I want you to give the warmest welcome to Matt Lockwood. Matt Lockwood. Keep it going. Yes, sir.
How's everyone doing tonight? Shannon, thank you for that introduction. It's greatly appreciated, and thank you to the foundation for having me out here tonight. It's truly an honor and a blessing for me to be here in more ways than I could possibly explain. So as I'm working through this and listening to Kathy's first story, I almost forget that I'm talking tonight. I get so captivated with Shannon emceeing in the first story that it's really humbling to experience what other people are going through. So I hope that my story helps some of you kind of sit back, reflect on your life, and take a bit or two pieces home with you tonight. Again, my name is Matt Lockwood. When my story began, or when my life began, was really 2 years ago. I was a 35-year-old, extremely active guy. Fitness had been kind of the pinnacle of my life, very career-driven, and really, really just focusing on myself, building both my career, taking care of myself, and really kind of thought I had life by the tail. Thought I was the happiest, most well-rounded, collected individual that I could imagine myself being at that time. And then August of 2016 rolled around. And I was out in Vancouver, Canada, visiting some friends. Out there, I'd never been to Vancouver before, so I was super excited. They asked me what I wanted to do, and I was like, I want to go on a 10-mile run. I want to see the city, but I want to run the city. I want to run the bay. So we started off that day. Perfect day, 75 degrees, sunny, and I really, really, really couldn't imagine a better day and a more beautiful city until the next thing that I remember after our post-dinner event was waking up like this in the hospital at 4 o'clock the next day. I really wish that this was like a real cliffhanger of a story, no pun intended, but it's not. We had finished dinner and we went out into this field across from my friend's house, and it was beautiful. You could watch the sunset and we're on the bay. And out there they throw these lit up frisbees, which, by the way, can be a very extreme sport. I don't know if any of you have ever stubbed the tip of your finger on a frisbee, but that hurts like the dickens. And but that wasn't even the case. The frisbee had gone back into this tree, into this wooded area, and I went to fetch the frisbee. There was weeds, there was trees. I assumed that I was safe, and the cliff was another 20 or 30 feet away from where you would go out and watch the sunset. So as I went over and reached for this frisbee, that's when the lights went out. And it was literally just like that. Everyone always asked me, well, do you remember the fall? What was it like? You know, and it was nothing. It was like someone shut off the lights in this room and everything just went blank. I came to a few times at the bottom. First to my friends yelling my name at the top. Matt, are you okay? Matt, please answer us. And I have no recollection of time frame. My hands were pinned behind my back. My face was buried in the dirt, and I could barely rotate my head just enough to collect my breath and get a few words out and say, yes, I'm fine. I can't move, but everything's okay. So they said, okay, paramedics are on the way. And I blacked back out. Came to again, one of my friends had made it to the bottom. He tapped me on the shoulder. He said, Lockwood, are you okay? I said, man, it feels like there's a knife in my back. I can't move. I could see some lights coming through the trees. He said, paramedics are on the way. Just hold tight. And I was back out again. Woke up a third time. Paramedic taps me, Mr. Lockwood, are you doing okay? I said, there's a knife in my back. I can't move. He says, hold tight. We're going to get you out of there. And that was it. 4 o'clock the next day, I wake up. I'm handcuffed to a hospital bed. Immediately people come over. I have a breathing tube in. They inform me that I've already had emergency brain surgery to relieve pressure on my brain, that I would require an additional surgery in the upcoming weeks. They weren't sure what it was going to look like, but that I had a burst fracture of my C6 vertebrae. And then that's kind of where my journey began. You know, I didn't really soak everything in for the first couple of days. There was this peacefulness and calmness about me that I didn't expect to happen. The worst thing that I could ever imagine for being a marathon runner, for going to the gym 7 days a week, and for how my lifestyle was at that point, was to wake up and be paralyzed, which was exactly how I woke up. Couldn't move anything on the right side of my body except for my right shoulder. I'm in the medical field, so I'm asking a million questions. From what procedures had been done to what I could expect, how soon could I run? I was supposed to run the Chicago Marathon the next month. I was in training. How soon can I get back out there? What equipment did you put in me? Who was the rep in the room? I'm asking all these questions. I'm driving them crazy. It wasn't until 2 or 3 days later, when they pulled the bandage off and they showed me this, that it really started to sink in. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, that's a fantastic haircut. And it wasn't half bad. And honestly, I feel like if I would have rocked it for a little longer, it probably could have taken off on social media. But it didn't, because I let it grow out. 47 staples is quite the image. So this was a point in my life where I'm asking these questions because I want definite answers. I want to know when I'm going to be able to walk again. I want to know what my limitations are going to be. Will I run marathons again? Will I be able to go back to work? And there was nothing. There was, you're probably going to be in the hospital for 3 to 6 months. We're going to do surgery in a few days. We don't know if you'll ever run again. We don't know if you'll ever walk again. These are things that we're going to figure out in the upcoming months. So for me at that point in time, it was kind of a crossroads. I could either accept what they were saying and lay there and hope that I would heal to the best possible situation that was available for me, or I could be resilient, I could create my own plan, and I could try to push the limits, which is exactly what I did. The 6 days between procedures, the neuropathic pain was so bad that I really couldn't move. The air conditioning would come on in the room, and it would feel like someone was peeling my skin off or that I was on fire. It was just this pain that I've never felt before that I can't even begin to explain. The closest thing to it is probably stubbing your pinky toe on the coffee table, which is very, very painful. So I immediately called my buddy Chad. I was in the hospital for 3 weeks in Vancouver. They got me to the point where I could take my first couple of steps. Slowly but surely, some movement started to come back. As I was working, I would lay there in bed at night. There's a lot of lonely hours to analyze everything, and I would just try to flex muscles. I would try to remember what it was like to move my leg, to move my foot, and I had that proprioception. I could still feel it, even though it wasn't moving. I would stare at my toe from midnight until 5 in the morning trying to get my toe to move, literally putting every ounce of energy I had into moving my toe, until one night at about 3:45 in the morning, I pushed the nurse call button. I had her come and look at this toe's moving. She's like, "You are a crazy man." I'm like, "Well, maybe so." So this is what I ended up with. I ended up with a cage and a plate, 4 screws. They removed my C6 vertebrae on the anterior side, put a cage in, plate over top, and now I was on my road to recovery. So this is my version of the Instagram. You guys have seen the girls that take the pictures of their leg by the ocean. It looks like 2 hot dogs sticking up. This is my version right here. It's going to take off, but you can see I was in the hospital for a total of 6 weeks. They told me minimum 90 days. I said, okay, I'm going to be out of here in 2 months. I got out in 6 weeks. I was in a rehabilitation program where they pulled me down once a day, and I would do inpatient rehab. And then I would make them wheel me down at night, and I would do my own rehab on my own. I was literally watching myself melt away at almost a pound a day. I lost 30 pounds in 6 weeks. So I went from a 185-pound marathon runner to literally this shadow of who I was, to the point where I didn't even recognize myself anymore. So I called my buddy Chad. I'm like, "Listen, I want every color resistance band. I want a Bogasu ball. I want you tying these things to my hospital bed on all corners." And I would sit there, and I would just pull these resistance bands. I would do triceps. I would try to do chest. I would tie it around the arm that barely moved. I'm like, all right, this has got to work. This has got to work. Any movement I could do, any step forward that I could take, I felt like I was moving in the right direction. And that was my mindset the entire time. So this tattoo is something that means a lot to me. I hadn't had any previous tattoos. I'd always thought about it, but never pulled the trigger. And I wanted something that reminds me that no matter how secure you think you are in your life, no matter how on top of things you are, no matter how sound your career is, no matter how happy you think you are, life can spin us in any direction at any time. And that's what that compass means to me, and it's right here on my ribs. It's on the right side, which is still my deficient side. It reminds me every single day. Those coordinates are the exact latitude and longitude of where I fell off that cliff. So every day I look in the mirror, it just kind of reminds me. Not that I don't have enough reminders already. I still limp around and stuff like that, but it's just one more way of me kind of keeping humble and keeping within myself. I was this 35-year-old guy on top of the world, or so I thought. I was extremely selfish with my time, extremely selfish towards relationships, both friendships and intimate to the point where it was really the Matt Lockwood show. If the Matt Lockwood show wasn't on, nobody was watching TV. And it wasn't until I was in the hospital laid up, uncertain of what direction my life would lead, or where I would end up, or to what degree I would recover to, that it really made me, it brought out the engineering side in me. I'm an engineering degree from Ohio State, ended up in medical sales, but I really sat there and reverse engineered my life. What was I really good at? Why was I really good at those things? Where have I failed in life? Or realized now that I have been failing? And how could I change that? So the things that I was good at physical fitness, I was good at work, career. Where was I deficient? I was deficient in my relationships with my friends. I had tons of friends and tons of social acquaintances. But how deep were those relationships? What did it mean? What did those relationships mean to me versus what did they mean to other people? I always considered myself to be very warm and very giving. However, it was always on my time. It was always when it was convenient for me, and not necessarily when it was always convenient or when other people needed me. So it's forced me to go back. And people talk about life being a little bit sweeter, and does the flowers smell better now? Is the steak a little bit juicier now? And those cliches are great, and yeah, to some degree, yes. But for me, it's really, there's this calmness and there's this humbleness in my life that I had never experienced before. And the appreciation you have for life when you feel like, or when you realize that there's only certain things you can control and other things you can't. So the things that you can control, why not make the most of all those moments? And it's been such a silver lining for me. People always ask, they're like, that must have been horrible. That must have been so much pain. Like, no, not really. What motivated me the most probably was seeing my mom walk in the room, the look on her face as she sat next to my bed, and I could see that the pain in her face was 1,000,000 times more than any pain that I was feeling. So my motivation was to get back to this strong image of this previous Matt that everyone knew. This guy that would go out there and just grind it. And I had to stay in that mindset and push all the pain aside in order to build back, because I knew that every day if I got stronger and I showed progression, it would take their pain away. So for me, it's the best thing that's ever happened to me. It is the true meaning of a silver lining to a situation. It's transformed the way that I view my relationships. I'm deeper with my friends. I talk about topics I open up to them in ways I never would have imagined. Wear my heart on my sleeve and make sure that I'm truly engaged in every situation instead of on my phone, checking social media, or looking around the room, not looking into the eyes of the person that's talking to me. I soak in every situation. I want that person to feel like I'm as engaged in them as they want me to be. In that, I live in the moment. Every single day is a true form of appreciation and gratitude that I have entering that day. I wake up to an alarm clock, to a song that literally shouts at the top of its lungs, "I'm a beast." And my friends think I'm nuts because I'm always talking about being in beast mode. I'm not happy being at the gym unless I feel like I could flip a car over in that moment. I'm just the way I'm wired. But now I've found a way to harness that and to hopefully transcend that into other people's lives and change the way that they view their day-to-day. And really, truly, genuinely, we talk about it all the time, but appreciate the little things in life. Because it's all those little things that eventually form us to who we are. And it's all those little things that you partake in that make someone feel special or to help someone in a certain way. You never know what someone is going through. People look at me now and they're like, "Oh, you look great. I would never be able to tell that you're in an accident." They'd never be able to tell that I'm holding the clicker in my right hand because when I get nervous, it claws up. But I know that. They'd never be able to tell that I limp around my house all the time and I bounce off stuff because my balance is off, because I ran my first half marathon and I'm training for my first marathon again, post-operative. These are things people don't know, the little nerve issues that I battle every single day. People don't know what you're going through on a daily basis. But if you can just step back, disconnect yourself, take a true appreciation for life. Life is about attitude and perspective. Mostly perspective. If my perspective is that for the first 35 years, yeah, it may have made me or developed an individual of who I am today, my perspective is that my life started on August 19th, 2017. So all those little forms of regret that came to me when I was in the hospital, that first 35 years, that although I didn't want to, I kind of felt like I wasted a lot of that time. I know that the next 35 years will be nothing like the first. I appreciate them for what they were, but the next 35 years is going to be a lot more rich. There's going to be a lot more substance. There's going to be a lot more experience. There's going to be a lot more thankfulness. And these are all things, like I genuinely feel blessed. I feel like I've been given this second chance to make a life that is so rich and enjoyable on all levels, not just career, financial. Unfortunately, I have to turn the Matt Lockwood show to another channel, but I've been able to do that. So if nothing else, I hope that my story at least has you go home and sit down and think about, is it really that bad that you got cut off in traffic today? Is it really that bad that your dog chewed up your shoe? Is it really that bad that someone posted a picture and you weren't included on Instagram? Are these little things really that detrimental to your life? Because they're not. Focus on the things that move us in the right direction. Focus on the things that put positive energy into other people's lives. I promise you that if you learn to love yourself and appreciate who you are and truly be honest with yourself about your own shortcomings, it's going to change the way that you think about yourself. It's going to change the way you think about others. You just got to be honest with yourself. And that's what I did. That's what I did for 6 weeks. That's what I've done every single day since. And if I ever get to a point, because it happens, we all get distracted. There's tons of distractions in this world. If I get distracted and I get caught up in something, I instantly think to all the people that I saw in that rehabilitation institute, some of them that are still there a year and a half later, that struggle every single day to move a toe or to build back strength enough to stand up. There's kids in there, there's adults in there. I think about them. They're still going through those struggles every day. I was fortunate enough that my outcome was a little more positive than some. But that's not the case for everybody. So whenever I feel like I'm getting caught up in the day-to-day stuff, or I'm focusing on some small stuff that doesn't necessarily push the needle, like I like to say, I just think back to that situation. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to me tonight. That's my story. Thank you.
I left the station. My friend finally came. We did our little interview thing, and I left the station so I can get home because my wife needed the car. We only got one car. So I get home, and I'm still thinking about resilience, driving home when I come in the door, and my wife is getting ready for something that she has to go to. So the first thing, I go over to her, because she was in the mirror putting on makeup and different things, and I said, baby, when I say resilience, what do you think of? And she sat there for a second. She stopped what she was doing, and she said, did you burn something in the kitchen? because I'm tired of this, Shannon. You have to stay with the food when you're doing the food. She never answered my question. She never answered my question. You ready for some more stories? All right. Our next storyteller is a treat. It's a very big treat. We so happy to have him here with us. He's a former NFL quarterback. He's an analyst for Fox NFL pregame shows, and he wrote a book called Real Men Do Cry. I like that, Real Men Do Cry. I love that. I love that, and I love that I'm seeing that push happen just totally. I'm seeing a lot more of that push. Men do cry, because I know I cry. I cried when I watched Rudy. I did cry when I watched Rudy. When Rudy, I just hold my head back. And he works with military veterans, former NFL players. Now, I asked him a question. I asked him that same question. I say, resilience. When you think of that word, what do you think of? And he gave, this is a true athlete. He gave the most obvious answer for a true athlete. I mean, it just like came right out of his mouth. He said a ball. He thinks of a ball. So I want you to get a warmest welcome to Eric.
I talk on mental health quite a bit, but I don't get a chance to talk about this part of it. And so it was April 9th. It was a beautiful day. I'd taken a flight to meet a client in British Columbia, in the mountains of British Columbia. He had a house there. And we went out for lunch, and we're sitting outdoors at this cafe, and it is just beautiful. Like one of the most beautiful days I've ever seen. And while we're sitting there talking, I got this wave. It's almost like euphoric wave went through me where everything was so clear and crystal clear and beautiful that it was hard to believe. After about 2 hours, we were back at the house. Got a phone call. And my wife says, Jeff is dead. My 15-year-old son was dead. He had gone into the room, she said, locked the door, went underneath my bed and got the shotgun out from the case and went into the bathroom. No! Can't be. Can't happen. Couldn't believe it. And yet, somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew. I asked a couple more questions. I took an emergency flight home. When I got home, I went right to the morgue. And as I'm standing there looking over his body, the guilt and the pain were so great, there is no way I can live with this. Is this my fault? Was it me that this happened? Why couldn't I see it? Why couldn't I do anything? Was it me? I mean, it was true. I had feelings like this when I was a kid, but I'm a Detroit Lion. I played 10 years in the NFL. I am tough. I get back up when I get knocked down. Why couldn't I see this? I mean, it was just 3 years earlier, and I had got done playing for about 7 years, but it's 3 years earlier from his death. When we were driving to the airport, my wife was driving, and I picked up a piece of paper and wrote, "I'm sorry, I love you." And I jumped out of the car. Hit the pavement going about 75 miles an hour. I don't remember anything because I was knocked out and passed out on the side of the highway. Pretty bloody mess. I was lucky that the cars swerved the freeway, they didn't hit me. But I woke up in the hospital and I'm bandaged up, had some surgery. And there's actually a psychiatrist that's sitting next to me. And he's talking to my parents who had flown in from California at the foot of the bed. And they're talking about what they can do with Eric. We can put him in the psychiatric unit, we can get a really good evaluation on him, and find out what's going on. No. Stigma is so strong, that is not gonna happen. No, not gonna happen. I'm fine. I don't know what it was, but it's over now. And that was a problem. Because he got up and shook and left. My wife had actually taken the note and put it in her pocket. Only those people around that bed knew I actually jumped. So psychiatrist leaves, the bandages finally come off, and I went out and just started doing my thing. Put my head down and never talked about it again. That was 3 years before Jeff died. So here I am. What am I going to do as I'm looking at his body? I cannot live with this. You know, and when I jumped out of the car, I thought I was actually doing everybody a favor. They'd be better off without me. I've got insurance. They'll be better off without me because that's how I felt. But right now, standing and looking at his body, the pain that you leave behind is so strong that there is no way I can take my life now. But what am I going to do? I can't live with this. I decided I will just be numb. That's what I will do. I've got alcohol. It's always been fun in my life, but now it's something totally different. I could get Vicodins pretty easily because I had 7 surgeries in my career and not hard to get medication for it. I had a big bottle of Xanax that a doctor gave me as a prescription, but he didn't give me the prescription, he gave me the bottle. And through that, I was just numb. I wasn't worried about my wife who had to take care of the funeral arrangements and everything else. I wasn't worried about my 7-year-old daughter that was in the next room when the gun went off. I was just numb. And I stayed that way until I finally got picked up on a DUI about a year later. It's going to happen sooner or later, the way I was going. I got picked up, got in front of the judge, and he gave me all these different options, but I didn't care, so I didn't do any of them. He had no choice, and he put me in jail for 60 days. That was my sentence. In jail for 60 days. I wouldn't allow anybody to come and see me. I wouldn't allow my wife, my family, not my friends, not my teammates, nobody. Not my pastor, nobody. I wouldn't let them come and see me. I just wanted to sit there in the cell by myself. Part of it was I was beating myself up. Part of it was I was still in shock and numb. Part of it was I didn't care. I don't want to live, but how do I do it? It wasn't until that time frame goes by and you start thinking about things and start picking your life apart and why did this happen and the guilt and all this stuff that goes through, you just basically over and over and over again. That towards the end when I knew I was going to get released, I thought maybe I'll walk around and see how I measure up to the other guys that are in here. And most of them are in there for drunken driving. That's what most of the guys are in there for. So I walked up on this group of guys and they had a little common area. I walked up on them and they were talking, and so I stood there and I listened to them talk. And while they were talking, the one guy that I was listening to talking the most was explaining to the other guys the reason why he's in jail. And he says he's in jail because a cop pulled him over because his taillight wasn't working. That's why he's in jail. He got arrested for DUI. And I looked at him, I was almost laughing. I go, what? I said, dude, this is your 3rd DUI. And you're blaming the cop for pulling you over? Is your reason why you're here? Had no accountability, responsibility at all. But then it was like a brick that hit me in the face. Boom. Oh my gosh. Is that me? That's me? My son died. That gives me an excuse to be sitting in here and ignoring my family and not doing anything, just living in this hell? I do not want to be that guy. In fact, I want to be the opposite. I want answers. I want answers to what happened to Jeff. I want answers to what happened to me. You know what? And for that matter of fact, I want to know what the deal was with my mom when I was growing up. And my dad would say, your mom's not coming out of her room. She's having one of her spells. What is that about? So when I got out, when I got out, first thing was in my mind was to try and learn about suicide prevention, and I did that. I went to a place called the University of Michigan Depression Center. Depression was never even in my vocabulary. But I went there. And I learned about what depression and mental illness and brain illnesses are. So I got some chemistry behind it, on how things are acting, that they're real, how they can affect us, and the symptoms that we can get from it, and everything all lined up. Oh my gosh, that's been me probably since I was a kid. It's my son, that was my mom. What do you do about it? I finally got treatment. It was in that treatment, in that education, that things started to change a little bit. You see, because when my 7-year-old daughter, Tara, turned 15, the same age that her brother died, all this stuff started flooding back to her. She was only 7 years old in the next room when it happened. Now she's 15, and it all floods back. And she starts, grades start dropping. Just like Jeff did, his grades started dropping. Started having trouble, stomach aches, headaches, back aches, night terrors, trouble sleeping, anxious all the time. Grades drop really, really low. And she was doing one other thing that we didn't know about, and she was cutting. It was her 2 friends that said, if you don't tell your parents what you're doing, we're going to tell them for you. And she came forward. And she showed us what was happening. But now, I know where to go. I know what to do. I can break this cycle so it doesn't keep happening over and over and over again. We got her into therapy. And she had maybe a 1.5 GPA, maybe 1.4, I don't know. It was just barely getting along at this point in time. She goes through therapy, and she went to the University of Michigan. I'm not touting University of Michigan. Yeah, I am. Okay, I'm sorry. But I am a little bit here. But I am actually touting the Depression Center, okay, and what therapy can do. And all she went through was talk therapy. That's all what she went through. But trauma-focused CBT. The change in her life, she went from that to graduating from Eastern Michigan University, magna cum laude. So she graduated with the magna cum laude in social work. And then this young thing got married to a Navy diver, so I appreciate the Navy diver story, Shannon. So I appreciate that. So she married a Navy diver, and she's getting her master's today in social work. So, yeah, awesome. So we're able to break that cycle, and so we are probably one of the most healthiest families. I look at it today, even though we have got diagnoses in our families, because it's not so much what happens to us. And by the way, her favorite story, what she talks about, is not the things. Her mantra is, it's not the things that happen to us in their stories that they don't define us. Okay? They do shape us, they do, but they don't define us. What defines us is what we do about them. They created, my daughter and my other daughter created Living Life on the Offense, a small website, some of it's based on some of the stuff I talk about, but they put that together. As I said, she got married. My other daughter got married, got a granddaughter, and we communicate all the time, and we talk. I know sometimes social networking and stuff, has a really bad connotation to it, and for good reasons when it's not used right. But I'm telling you right now, being able to Skype with her, she lives in Washington, she lives in Seattle right now. Being able to talk to her and stuff on a daily basis when she needs it is fantastic. Okay? But they've done that. So what defines it is what you do about something, right? And so if you're going to ask me what I think resilience is, besides the quip I had at the beginning and besides the bouncing ball, it is survive and thrive. That's what resilience is. It's not enough that we just survive, right? I mean, there's people out there surviving and they're not thriving. We can take trauma and turn it into triumph. So it's not so much that we survive, but we thrive. And part of that means is we do advocate for ourselves. Okay? And we advocate for other people that might not be ready to advocate for themselves yet. Okay? That's the thriving part. And if we thrive and do it right, okay, then we can talk about mental health as it should be talked about, which encompasses everybody. If I say you can be mentally fit, that just doesn't apply to somebody that doesn't have a brain illness or mental illness. No, that includes them. Because if you have a mental illness and you're taking care of yourself and you're advocating for yourself and you're able to survive and thrive, you're one of the most mentally fit, healthy people that I know. And I know quite a few of them around. Some of them are here today. So I want to say thank you very much. Thanks for listening to me and kind of hanging in there with me. I didn't lose it. I got close, but I didn't. And survive and thrive. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
more time. Eric Hipple. The honesty of our storytellers, the bravery to stand up here and tell their stories. And if you lost it, that's all right. You wrote the book, you know? You wrote the book. Make sure that you get the different books that our storytellers have. And I feel, Matt, you got a book in you too. Yeah, you got a book in you too. You got a book in you too, yeah. Each of our storytellers, Kathleen has a book, Eric has a book, and Matt's is soon to come. So, but I hope you guys were examining yourselves, because each one of you has some books and some stories and some things that you can share to help others, because I was helped today, big time, from each of the stories. Were you helped in any way? And I look around the audience and I can see so many people with so many different stories. I see my friend Jim here. He told a story last year. And it's so happy to see you, because I remember when you started sharing your story and telling your story. And every one of us in here has a story. I think about my sister back here who won't share her story on my podcast. But I'm going to get you to share your story one day, because everybody has a story. Everybody here has a story. So I want you guys to be examining and thinking of your own story.